quick disclaimer. Opinions of host and guest do not represent the views or opinions of Functional Movement Systems. Always consult your physician before beginning any exercise program. This general information is not intended to replace your healthcare professional. Welcome to the Movement Podcast. This show is all about movement. We tackle it from different angles, bring on guests, answer questions, go on a few tangents, and give practical advice, giving you guys a better idea of how you can optimize the human body to be the best it can be. Let's preview what's coming up in this episode. After a lot of positive feedback from our first Mailbag episode, we decided to bring it back. Today, we answer questions from you, the listener. We discuss movement integrity with marathoners and triathletes, options to improve movement at a desk job, training hockey players, working with clients with scoliosis, and much more. So let's get going with today's episode of the Movement Podcast, powered by FMS. All right, so Gray, we have a lot of listeners as well as people on social media kind of watching what we're doing, and we get a lot of questions. As you know, you've been getting these through your entire career. So now they're a little bit more targeted since they have the ability to kind of talk to us as much as they do. So we've collected some questions, and I am excited for you to kind of take the opportunity to answer some of them for us.
I'm excited to answer them as well, and without Lee here, we won't have those mindless or stupid interruptions that at least make him feel relevant during the podcast. So we should be able to get some stuff done here. He's in Florida on an exercise video shoot. Now, I don't know whether that involves Lee in spandex or Lee's just getting FMS to pay for a golf trip where he's just going to look in on a photo shoot and say, keep it up, guys. I'll be on a meeting. So
he's just trying to get away from the weather we have here and get to Florida.
Yeah, he told his family it was a business trip, and so we're gonna go
That's what we'll go with.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get started. Our first question actually comes from one of the surveys that we put out. I like the podcast and I listen to it every week. After listening this week, I was hoping to get Gray's perspective on purposeful tension in movement. I find a lot of people I work with putting excessive force into their motion, i.e. asking them to use a resistance band, they put in 10 pounds of force plus their own eccentric resistance to the movement to move the band more. My question for Gray is that, in his opinion, would the musculoskeletal nervous system not benefit more from putting in the minimum effort, deliberate force into motion instead of just inputting force to create the motion regardless of the resistance?
I totally get it. And first of all, that's a very insightful observation. When we hand people resistance, we see them overshoot, we see them undershoot. Now, you've captured that pattern. Ashley, you've coached, you've been a trainer, you've watched a move that you know well, and you've seen somebody overshoot it. Mm-hmm. And what you say to yourself is, yeah, you got it done, but if you had to do 160 of those, you wouldn't make it past 30 because you were grossly inefficient. Once you've got that observation, the one thing you got to realize is you got an exercise, a training background, you understand the musculoskeletal system, exercise science. They don't realize you just put them in a motor moron category. But if somebody wanted to get me to quote Shakespeare, I would be a literary moron. So we've all got our things. When somebody gets a piece of band and does too much with it, they are so far out of their element, they have no choice but to overshoot or undershoot. If they undershoot, it's humiliating, so they've only got one choice, overshoot. Now, if we see a neurological system that has so much tension and tone that it's going to be inefficient, then let's be honest, no learning can occur here. That's where I'll go to something like the balance beam or what I did as a gym coach over at Heritage Academy. I had all the kids jump off the first bleacher, stick the landing. The kids who landed 2 tenths couldn't stop and just drop into a squat. They bounced, right? They were tense. So inflate a ball and try to make it not bounce. They were all tense. And so stick the landing means soften yourself. When I send you on a balance beam before we're going to do a workout today, and you step off that beam 5 times in 30 feet, and I know for a fact that if you'll just breathe and chill out, maybe do a few of your stretches, get your 3 favorite yoga poses, all of a sudden without practicing balance, balance got better.
Right.
That means we all have tension we need to dump. And if we're not active, and if our life doesn't have enough active purpose to help us dump that tension, we're going to bring it to every new physical thing we've got and probably poison the well before it can give us anything to drink. So I, number one, commend that observation of too much tension. You're doing algebra when they don't have basic math. So now take them back to balance or landing. With adults and people who are more patient and wellness oriented, I put them on a balance beam and I let the obstacle be the way. Meaning, why do you think you can't balance? Do you think it's inner ear? Are you drunk? Is your neurological system failing? Or are you actually thinking too much about something that should happen naturally? And believe it or not, if we stop talking, within 5 minutes, most of the things we wish we could have coached away will be gone. Most people don't have 5 minutes to center their balance. With kids, I get them to jump off a box that's appropriate to their age and athleticism, and I say stick the landing. And when they can't stick the landing, they're just too tense. They're too sprung up. So it's a great way to take the kids who can't stick the landing and say, this isn't a flexibility problem, although you do feel tight or stiff. And that brings me to one other observation that has been central with everything we've ever seen when I do a movement trick with somebody. And you weren't there in the early days. We'd bring somebody on stage who hadn't touched beyond their kneecaps in 15, 20 years, and we'd get them to their toes. Number one, I can see tension all over people. You know how, what was it, Bruce Willis movie, I Can See Dead People or something? I can see tension all over people. And here's the thing. If I can drastically change your motion in a single corrective, you're a tense MF, okay? You're just tense. And that means I recalibrated, readjusted you in a window of time. Tissue doesn't respond and adapt that quickly. I mean, all of us feel a little more flexible after the hot tub, but none of us really are because nobody measures it. You just feel more relaxed. If I only change you a subtle bit with some of our correctives, it doesn't mean they didn't work, but you're tight. You're stiff. You have been tense so long that your tissues adapted in a shortened range, your fascia doesn't move in an elegant and 3D way, and your joints aren't in alignment. So all three of those things make you very, very stiff, and you're supposed to change slow because if any of those things change fast, you're just going to have this unpredictable movement scenario. So a lot of people lean on their stiffness and it changes slow, and a lot of people say, well, I saw Gray Cook pick up 6 inches on a toe touch. That was tension. That was muscle tone. That was electrical. If you're tight when you're asleep, you're tight. but I've seen that, and a lot of times people really see all tension, tone, tightness, and stiffness as the same thing. And when I say those 4 words, it's hard for you not to think stretching, breathing, lengthening, foam rolling, I need a massage. Hey, if you're tense, I can do a toe touch progression, pick up something. What's causing it? What in your life has got you this braced for a catastrophe? Or are you poorly organized in your movement? What's your feedback loop? So the very first thing that I try to do, having you jump off something and stick your landing or walk on a balance beam, is demonstrate to you that you don't know how to soften when softness is the competitive advantage. And once I teach you how to soften, getting you to harden incrementally means you don't breathe the same way with a kettlebell swing as yoga, but breathing right for each thing makes that thing better. And so we do get back into this self-calibration. And I've worked at the highest levels of tennis and used to watch on the second serve, Venus, Serena. I was with Reebok, so was Andy Roddick, so I got to have contact with these people. When you see them adjusting their strings after a false serve, those strings aren't out of alignment. They're going through something that works for them to recalibrate, reset, dump the tension, get the focus. I'm serving all over again. And don't bring any of the previous mistake over here. They're doing it, and everybody does it different, but it's not about the strings. They're dumping tension and tone. And it's taken me most of my life to learn how to do that. And we'll pick these signature moves in your corrective that fits your profile and deal with it. This is like sanding the fence, sanding the floor, painting the fence, waxing the car. If you don't have a month to invest to sort of reshape your ability to, harden or soften yourself for the situation, then really you're not treating your system the way it needs to be honed. I think we do exercises. We don't let the exercise do anything to us. I tell a lot of people, running's left a bigger mark on you than you've left on running, but I could say the same thing for lifting or yoga or martial arts. People don't embrace the grace that you're supposed to carry along with that.
Mm-hmm. A follow-up to that, when it comes to like group exercise, people are coming in, let's say, my most popular class was really that right after work class, the right after work or the right before class. So we'd have, 15, 20 people in a room. Do you think they should be we'd always start with a warm-up. Mm-hmm. Should they be starting with something that kind of brings them back down to a place of relaxation, almost the stress of the day, getting ready for the day, all of those things kind of impacting their body in different ways. And we would just tell them to go run a lap, do some kettlebell swings, warm up in different ways. But I'll say we didn't do breathing exercises. We did some PVC work to mimic the movement of an Olympic weightlifting movement, but we didn't think about breathing or kind of setting themselves up in that way. Do you think that's something that in like group exercise, HIIT training, they could start implementing that and it would make an improvement? Yeah,
I actually did that for the last 3 years at Perform Better when they would hold the big summits and I'd have like 150 people in the room. And it's like, what kind of equipment do you need to share? I'm like, I just want the 3 or 4 foot foam roll sliced in half. So there's a flat edge and a dome edge. And I'm like, believe it or not, I'm gonna go an hour. And they're like, how's that going to be a workout? But it was one of those things where I've got a balance beam, I've got a wobble board, I've got an asymmetrical surface, and I wasn't foam rolling you. Right. I'm basically saying, the world is so flat right now, you don't have any obstacles. So the yoga mat of the future is a half foam roll. It's a speed bump. What's a speed bump mean in a parking lot? Slow down and pay attention. Slow down and pay attention. Slow down and pay attention. So basically, I think in about 8 minutes, you could have the best half foam roll tension dump recalibration you could. And I think that too many people exercise to exercise, meaning that warm up, it's not dumping tension. Sometimes it makes more. All you're doing is trying to run out that road rage or that coworker contempt or the last argument you had with somebody, And what I want to do is take you in the exact opposite place. And what Danielle and I noticed when we were volunteer gym teachers for 3 years is we would put the kids on the half foam roll. And they're coming out of class, some are amped up, some are very depressed. There was something about calibrating the room with an activity that wasn't so athletic that some kids were better, but wasn't so basic that it didn't challenge everybody. Yeah. Get on the balance beam, and we would go through this little kata. And I had about 8 moves that I would do, but depending on the day, depending on how people were responding, I'd stick on 3. When they're really wobbly, I'd get them to slow down and breathe and stuff like that. And they were all barefoot and getting those feet and just getting those neurons and just dumping that tension. And then all of a sudden, we're ready to run again. But now it's constructive, creation of tension, not just this anxiety that I'm trying to burn off and don't know why. So I would actually take everybody who's ready to get after it and say, you're going to get after it. Let's all take our foot off the gas pedal so we can get a clean start. I think that's great. Yeah. I think too many people don't. They go straight from one gear to the next. So I think that's awesome. No, and for our listeners, if you want to try this, the 3 flows that we've got up on the FMS website, one of those is going to suit you. And if you already know you've got a lot of mobility challenges, go to the mobility flow. If you basically don't have a lot of mobility challenges, but stability, core, balance, posture is an issue, go to the one for motor control. And if you think you're pretty put together and just want to really keep polishing yourself before and after workouts, do the one for symmetry. And when in doubt, start at mobility. I was going to say, it never hurts to try
any of them and,
Yeah.
and see where you are. You may think, oh, this will be easy for me. And then you are suddenly much more aware as to what you truly need. All right. So today in the studio, we have just you. And Lee always makes a good point to kind of make fun of you when you are wearing a sleeveless shirt. So today we have you actually in a flannel. You actually called yourself, what did you say, lumberjack mode today?
Oh, yeah. It's sleeveless.
Oh, still
it's sleeveless. Yeah, but this is, I made a New Year's resolution. I had been doing my Indian club work and my sandbag work, the smallest sandbags, the ultimate sandbag, Josh Hinkins stuff, but I get the water bag instead. Okay. So it's about a 16 to 20K kettlebell equivalent. Oh. But because of some of my wrist problems and stuff like that, I can get by with the water bag. So I was doing get-ups, windmills, single leg deadlifts, a lying chop and lift move with the water bag, and some pretty weird presses just to loosen myself up. And then I was dumping the tension using Indian clubs. But everything I was training for during hunting season, where I'm sitting around a lot and walking, was for lumberjack season, which happens right when deer season ends, and I got to get out in the woods, and I'm dropping trees and making firewood and stuff like that. And so I was actually training in the fall so I could actually get something done and work. So I chainsaw, I cut wood, I carry wood, I split wood. And about that time, I'm ready to cut wood again. So I do each of those movement patterns and just, yeah.
So that's why you need the sleeves now.
Yeah. Yep.
So the question does get brought up a lot. What is it with the sleeveless shirts? Is it purely comfort, or is there an actual reason for it?
It's old man comfort. I feel more comfortable that way. In the summertime, it beats taking your shirt off, and you can dump a lot of heat. But everybody's always made fun of me of it. But most days I come to the office, it's not the only place I'm going. Usually I'm going to the farm, right, or I'm going to the cabin. And if I've got to be on phone calls, if I've got to do interviews and stuff like that, sometimes I'll do them outside. So
less restriction.
I dress to work, and then sometimes I don't.
All right. So in your, when you were originally just kind of out of school, you've mentioned that you went to Canada and worked on manual therapy technique. Mm-hmm. What was your favorite manual therapy technique that you've used, and what did you use it for? I was fascinated by the manipulation or the chiropractic adjustment, or the fact that I could put my hands on you and make a pop occur somewhere, and then you could go wide-eyed and say, oh my gosh, because you had that tension release. So right. What I realized is when I came through PT school, the PT profession in large frowned on manipulation or adjustment when not used by a scientific method, just racking and cracking somebody for no reason. And I understood that. And there were irresponsible people who had manipulative skills. But the deeper I studied that and looked into manual therapy and osteopathy and some of the history of manipulation, it goes into Chinese medicine, it goes into an ancient art called bone setting, and I realized there's way more here than meets the eye, but it does require training. And I'll be honest with you, so much of physical therapy school when I went through was academic debating, and nobody really putting on their damn leather gloves and going and show you what they could do. Right. And so I really very much embraced the manual therapy end of physical therapy, which was, I think, undertaught in the United States at that time, and very well taught in the UK, in Canada, in Australia. And there was a basic sense of physical therapy using the modalities of physics, heat, light, ultrasound, stuff like that to help you heal. And then this more aggressive, very sort of sniper precision marksmanship of, and I'm going to manipulate your neck and your TMJ is going to feel better, or something like that. And to me, that was like flying jets. That was, the old movie Top Gun. I didn't just want to fly what everybody else was flying. I wanted to be Top Gun. I wanted to fly jets. And so what I realized is I was very well trained to become the person you saw after your knee or shoulder surgery and get you through rehab. And then I started thinking, Jesus, this is like being a line cook. This is not like being a chef at all. And so I really embraced manual therapy. The easiest way for me to get in the door was to go up to Canada and study in their workshops
And at the time, I was already a strength coach and physical therapist, and probably they at least thought I knew more about functional exercise than they did, and I was absolutely sure they knew more about manual therapy than I did. So I would work out situations where I could teach and then stay and train even when I didn't have the budget to just go up there and study. So I tried to not just learn manual therapy, but I tried to immerse myself in that culture. And the problem was they were so astute on precision diagnostics that I came back and I never could look at physical therapy the same way again. I realized this is what you and the doctor think is wrong, but there's an entire layer of functional and movement problems neither of you are aware of. If I don't do diligence with those, I'm really just sitting here holding your hand while you do your exercises, and I'm not that.
Yeah.
I couldn't be that. So,
was there anyone else from the States doing what you were doing?
Oh yeah. There were good manual therapists, but they were in pockets. It's almost like, if you walk into 10 dojos, you're going to meet exactly what you think, and then all of a sudden you're going to see this person who's a humble master, right? And I did. I met these people, and it's like I would watch them and watch what they did with their hands and watch the way they spoke, and I'm like, ooh, you're one of those people. You get movement at a different layer, and you know how to change it in an elegant way. Without making excuses or saying, well, you're not doing your exercises and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Here's a good one from BL Health Perform. This is an Instagram question. What is your take on incorporating FMS with someone who has scoliosis?
I think that going through a movement screen should be something none of us should be scared to do, because if you do it in a way where you ask a few questions up front, I don't expect anybody's going to get surprised by pain. However, I do know from over 20 years of working with scoliosis that there is a functional and structural component. And what that means is when we watch you, when we see that little curve or that deformity or whatever, when you bend forward and one side of your rib cage is higher than the other, we almost know that the structure of your body, your spine, your bones, they're actually torqued in a different direction because of that imbalance, that irregular muscle pull. Now, we don't know what causes it all the time. It could be a growth spurt. It could be driven from your guts, and you have to orient your spine just so you're more comfortable leaning on this side than that side. I definitely think because of the extra equipment females have to carry, and fibroid tumors and stuff like that, the uterus, the ovaries, you can definitely contort your spine to accommodate a different intra-abdominal compartmental pressure. So we've got to consider all those. But in every scoliosis, there is a part that's hard and a part that's soft. The hard part ain't going to change. Your bones are torqued that way, but that ain't 100% of your scoliosis. There is a big component, in most people about 50%, that's just a bunch of unnecessary muscle tension in a constant tug of war. And if we can show people with scoliosis that, and this hip is tighter, and that shoulder's tighter, and you don't rotate your neck, and that ankle's tighter, and they're like, well, maybe my scoliosis caused that. Maybe it did. But if it doesn't need to be there, let's unburden the situation as much as possible and let you know when you're out of alignment and when you're going to start feeding into the scoliosis or leaning away from it. And so if I give a 14-year-old female in a growth spurt a balance test on her right and left leg, when you're wobbly on your right leg, do your exercises and you will be more upright and every step will be therapeutic. And when you can't balance on your right leg, instead of you limping like other people would, you're just going to torque your body and make up for it that way. So I really try to emphasize how much of personal awareness can be, because what feels normal to you is crooked. And I'm saying it in a humorous way. And what looks very, very weird, what feels very, very weird to you is really good alignment. And all we have to do is get you calibrated up to that. First time I had a cup of coffee, it didn't taste good. Now it tastes real good. I accommodated. So we just tell people the signals that you're receiving right now aren't as normal as you think they are, and the adjustment, as long as we give you something, and most kids will understand, well, my legs should be equally balanced under me. If they're not, at least I can work on that. That's all I wanted to hear. Right. So, and we do the same thing.
Does a person, with scoliosis, is this something that they should consistently work on, like maybe even seeing a PT or this type of training to make sure kind of alignment is?
Yeah, I so many people are reluctant to see a PT because they think they're going to get this 3 times a week for 3-week commitment. I'm like, I think people ought to just out of pocket see a PT just for a structural evaluation. And I know you're going through therapy right now, but Allison's good. And if she evaluates you and you got enough grit to do your exercises on your own, you don't got to see us a lot. But you do need a feedback loop, and I always give my patients a test to know if their exercises are working. So if you don't see your balance getting better over the next week, I want to know about it. If you do, why would you stop doing what I told you to that's got you this good? Right. Because maybe it hasn't plateaued yet. So, I really pride myself in the fact that the therapists that I've tried to work with and train realize that if I only see you once, I'd like to do something to make you better. Most of that will be in the form of advice, and I wouldn't do that for the next couple of weeks. I would do way more of this, but I think that a lot of people, if you are worried about scoliosis, should have a lot of the things that a PT can document it. The other thing is an x-ray, because 10 years from now, wouldn't you like to compare the tread on your tires and what's happened, because your scoliosis could be getting worse, it could be staying the same, or it could be getting slightly better. And so setting these baselines and then not feeling the obligation to commit to therapy, but just know where you are, and then I'm going to try to do it natural. So that to me is a good start of the journey. But look at all the imbalances that we could find. We in the motor control screens in FMS, we capture your plank and your pistol, right? And we capture it right and left. As long as those two things are imbalanced, you're going to have a problem. And a very, very good and wise man wrote a book a long time ago called The Naked Warrior. Pavel, long before he was famous for everything he said about kettlebells, said, you can do this without a kettlebell. And he shows you in this book how to get a single leg squat and how to do a one-arm push-up. And so you're going to run into huge asymmetries there. You're not going to have an FMS problem at the end of this book. The problem is, if you have huge movement problems, you might not even be able to get on that program. You may need a starting point. But once your flexibility is equal left to right, nobody thinks, well, can I do a pistol on this leg, a pistol on this leg? Can I hold a plank as long on this side as that side? Or can I even do a push-up? So once we start quartering the body, you will see ways to feed the scoliosis and not think about the spine curvature, but an imbalance in your arms and legs can cause the spine to benefit the weak side and lean away from the strong side simply to center yourself. If you've got less air in one front tire, you're going to constantly turn to one side just to go straight. It's the exact same analogy for scoliosis. There's so many behaviors associated with that imbalance that if we can mitigate those behaviors and give a balance or a strength feedback loop, so much of it fixes itself.
Yep. It sounds like people kind of assume if you know you're starting off with this imbalance, if you can't be at a state of like homeostasis of like, could I get a 3 on everything, then why do it? But in this scenario specifically, it's to be sure, see where you actually are completely. Who cares if you're not going to have a perfect score? The idea is to actually be able to judge it and track it and see what progress can be made and where it can be made. And if you never do it, you wouldn't know.
I would say the best advice I can give people about FMS, because everybody gets so tied up in numbers, is aim for a 3, accept a 2, never settle for a 1. There's no reason for it. And once you know the reason, if you do have pins in your ankle or something like that, get the hell on with it. That movement pattern is no longer available to you. Let's help you live with this, compensate, know how to protect, correct, and develop yourself now that we know you got that. If you don't have an excuse for your 1, then it's probably you.
For over 30 years, Functional Movement Systems has been the leader in movement health. We've developed a system that bridges the gap between fitness, performance, and healthcare professionals. Our screen and assessment tools help pros set the course for their clients and patients and gets them moving well so they can continue to move often. The Functional Movement Screen is the foundation of our system and checks vital signs in movement competency through patterns. From youth or professional athletics to the elderly population and everyone in between, the screen is your starting point. The presence of pain is a vital sign we consider in our system. The Selective Functional Movement Assessment, geared toward healthcare professionals, is the diagnostic assessment for individuals experiencing pain during movement or with the screen. Once proper treatment is administered by clinicians, the patients are cleared to resume regular activity. The screen is once again at play to set the movement baseline. But what's next? When an individual displays competency in the screen, it's time to advance to another level. The Fundamental Capacity Screen, which tests for fitness, performance, and capacity. The system identifies whether individuals warrant additional rehabilitation or corrective exercise, or if they're ready for performance-based activity. Decide what course is right for you and get started on your professional journey today.
All right, we have another question. How does someone keep movement integrity during triathlons, marathons, and other fatiguing activities?
I think that having a personal kata, okay, if you embrace strength and the art of strength, I think a Turkish get-up or a 6-position carry once a week will let you know if you're balanced or if you're wrecked. And if you're wrecked, I wouldn't schedule another race. Just bench the ego for a minute. And, you know, if you're not that self-aware, you actually start with a movement screen and do your thing, right? So many people who get into movement screening don't just allow the baseline to be the baseline. Let's say you're a triathlete. You come to me, you're like, you know, I have a lot of issues and problems. I don't even know where to start. Let's screen you, okay? Do your thing. Now, number one, how wrecked are you after a race, and how long does it take you to get back? Because we've noticed that in football, we've noticed that with training and in the military and stuff like that. It's easy to wreck your movement screen, and that's all you're working with on any given day. Your movement screen is your movement state of readiness, your heart rate variability, your respiration, your body temperature, your hydration, your breathing is your metabolic state of readiness. And if your movement state of readiness is 30% lower today, then maybe you ought to be working on that and not the sport, the event, or the goal, because your operating system is less than it was when you were competing. And trying to compete with a less than optimal operating system is only going to make you compensate. Compensation is a survival mechanism that says you have no integrity today. So most of us compensate when we move, either to avoid pain or to finish a performance goal, all right? And that's where the limp comes from, right? You got a rock in your shoe, you're supposed to limp. But if I take the rock out of your shoe and you're still limping, for many people, that is the functional problem they can't let go of. They had an incident, a growth spurt, a broken bone, a really bad injury, a pulled or torn muscle. They adopted a compensatory movement pattern, which temporarily was a good decision. Compounded with 3 triathlons and 2 boot camps, it ain't going away. It is part of you. That limp is a signature. It's not going away. So how many times are we limping and don't need to? Because you're either limping because you're in pain or you once were. And that's what we usually see is we see a lot of movement habits. There's nothing behind them. The problem's gone. You just compounded the crap out of this by not realizing that your screen was 3 points lower than your average because you hit the workout instead of the rest and regen a little bit harder and you're not back. When we watch athletes through a hockey or football season, their screen goes down. When I look at you after a triathlon, your screen's going to go down. How do you get it back the quickest? And how do you race at a level where your screen doesn't go down that much? And then I think we'll actually be getting these truer things. So the Turkish get-up, the sun salutation, the chop, the lift, the single leg deadlift, the motor control screens, the movement screen, a Turkish get up and some carries. And what I'm saying is, I'm not telling you to do these. Don't consume these. Do them so you will know how good you are at each activity. And then on a day when you can't do a Turkish get up as good, assume your movement screen is worse, your balance is worse, your planks are worse, and your state of readiness is worse. If your sun salutation, you can't take deep breaths, assume your movement's worse, your tension's worse, your breathing's worse, your balance is worse. And just find your own kata. So too many people do the movement screen, get their corrective, and then take it like a vitamin, not knowing what's in there. But I can relate so many of your movement patterns back to a stage in the Turkish get up or a part of the sun salutation, 3 Indian club patterns, a bent press, a single leg deadlift, and a chop and lift. Just get your kata, and when you're off mark, spend more time getting your fundamentals back than hammering whatever your watch says you need to do today, and you'll be fine.
Right. Recognizing the fatigue is coming from those and not necessarily just, well, it is coming from the over movement, but recognizing it, associating it with the movement and not just, oh, I'm tired right now in the middle of doing this and thinking you can fix it right then. It's the pre-work that needs to be done or even the post-work, but in that moment.
We've made exercise so easy. We've created an on-ramp of exercise for people who hate exercise that's so easy, it's become ineffective. And it's effective in that it's way better than sitting, and you do stir up some good blood chemistry and endorphins. But if I took a movement sample of how you improved your body, you didn't.
Right.
And I think we all know that. How many of us have been working out for more than enough time to change our body comp and still haven't? Then that tells you it's probably way more lifestyle. You can't out-exercise a bad diet. So you got to tap back into lifestyle. Rest and regeneration, are those two things. And so if you're doing that and rest and regeneration is good, your function's broken. And so you can't get into some of the movement patterns that would easily stoke that metabolic furnace. Mm-hmm. And I think Alan Cosgrove is very eloquent in the fact that, he movement screens you, looks at your body comp, and then lets your corrective be your metabolic load, knowing that in that corrective path, we're not going to bump up against your orthopedic issues before you start losing weight. And once you start losing weight, you're going to also move a little bit better. You'll have more options. Yep. So the entertainment and the variety of your program gets bigger with your success. And I will keep you on the narrow diet path of movement you need to be on until we get that, because any other variety is just distracting you from a lack of success. Right.
So maybe think about why you signed up for that half marathon before you start training for it.
Yes.
Okay. Our next question comes from Buff's Brain. So we'll see if it's a smart question.
All right.
What are some important aspects when working with hockey athletes? Do you have any advice there?
Yeah. Have an understanding of the sport, but at the same time, don't be so much of a fan that you're trying to change on ice performance. Most of these guys who have made it to the highest levels of hockey can do great things on a bad day, even better things on a good day. I think every time I've ever gone into pro sports, I have acted more like a humble janitor, cleaning up the classroom so the professor could do their work. And when I uncovered huge problems, or, hey, there's a gas leak in here, let's cancel class, people really embrace that humility. So I have gone into most of my professional sport endeavors, and hockey was one of them, and I had no background in hockey.
What's the training even like for hockey?
It's
completely on ice or anything off?
No, it's become a lot more off ice than it used to be. But it's borrowed from football. It's borrowed from functional training. It's borrowed a little bit from Olympic lifting and power lifting and kettlebell training. It's what everything else is. But the minute we see your workout slow you down, or make you too muscle bound to play. And that's one of the things a guy named Ronnie Francis, he's a Stanley Cup guy. He was down with the Carolina Hurricanes when I first started screening them through a guy named Pete Friesen, who was their strength coach and physical therapist. Ronnie Francis was a veteran. He's like, these younger guys go off to these camps, they come back muscled up. They look great, but they don't play any better. And that's where I would tell people, listen, every one of these sports breaks you down. Greg Rose says it best, golf is not good for you. It's going to break you down if you do it well, right? Because when you look at Tiger swing, he's ripping himself in half, and people have seen him do it, and he's tough. So assume that no sport is good for you. Every one of these athletes is playing in an uncomfortable or painful way. The quicker you find it and address it and let them save face and help them out of it, giving them that constructive advice, giving them these little moves that make them feel better, measurably so, you feel better. And I just measured, 10% better balance. That means your central nervous system is liking what we're doing here. Yeah, but we're just rolling around on a mat, half kneeling. And your central nervous system is liking it better. Let's do that, And so I make a lot of my corrective inroads with these athletes by not being such a sports fan or trying to make every movement pattern their slap shot or their fast break or something like that. Don't be that much of a tool or a fan. You got to get in there and make sure ankles feel good, hips are moving symmetrically, shoulder turns are good, make sure that the basic movement screen is there. The movement screen is not sport specific. If there's a 1 there, it's interfering with the sport you're talking about. I don't need to know what the sport is. Right. Because a 1 on the movement screen means you cannot cover normal range of motion when I ask your body to be in this posture, in this pattern. Normal range of motion. All athletes should at least start there. So
now I can't imagine a hockey player who could basically get on fist fights if they want to in the middle of a game. I can't imagine that they would be that willing to admit maybe a pain somewhere or when something hurts because, I just think of them as being incredibly tough athletes.
They are, and I don't even meet these people until they're out for a while, all right? So now it's I can't come back from an injury, all right? So they try this and they try that and they rub some cream on that and they shine some infrared on that. Yeah. NFL strength coach contacted me one day and said, this athlete just went online and heard that putting horse placenta on his knee could make things better. And I'm like, well.
Just because they don't want to go to actual therapy.
Right. But yeah.
Have someone tell them they have to take a break.
Yep.
Okay. We're coming to our last couple questions. What is one easy to use strategy that I can implement at work? So I'm guessing maybe if they're not feeling good sitting in their chair or they've been sitting for too long. I'm not sure what this person means.
No, you know what? I'll do a few things. A few years back, Kelly and Juliet Starrett were really inspirational with the stand-up desk with kids at school, and obviously that trickled over, and we see a lot more office places with the standing desk. But what we realized, I think, when we would send astronauts to outer space and bring them back, is we have young men getting osteoporosis because they got no gravity, right? And what we realized is if they start back in their fitness regime that they left when they left gravity, their body has been decalibrated for a few minutes or a while. And let's be honest, most of us aren't ready for athletic impact. Right? We're just not. We can do our little workouts, we can do our thing, but the type of impact that athletics and hard workouts demand, we're not tough enough to do that. So what I tell people is being able to run the scales of position change. So if I'm stuck in a cubicle, I can have a standing desk and I have a sitting desk, but those are just two. It's the transition between patterns. It's almost like getting down on the floor and getting back up. And nobody wants to be half kneeling in their cube or doing a toe touch progression on a half foam roll. But ultimately, how many people stand there in the crappiest posture ever at their standing desk? Well, one of the things I know is you can't stand nearly as sloppy on one foot. A lot of standing desks actually have that swinging bar, right? You put one foot up there, but you could do the same thing with a stool. So do as much as you can in single leg stance, or what I call propped single leg stance. The other leg is on a stool, but you're definitely not weight bearing on it. Now, don't lock any of your joints, soften your knee, and then switch that. But I would say take a knee 3 or 4 times a day on each side. Deep squat 2 or 3 times a day. Enjoy your sitting time, enjoy your standing time, but then if you're going to sit with your legs crossed, cross them the other way. If you're going to stand on one foot, stand on the other side. And before you know it, you will have sort of balanced out the day, and you'll start to get aware of these habits that are about 80-20. And if you move those habits back to 50-50, your body will start to adapt too. Once again, I can't say it enough. If you get a movement screen first and just make some of these changes without getting OCD on correctives, you'll change your screen in a month just by becoming more aware. So,
when you're changing kind of your stature, standing, sitting, et cetera, would you suggest maybe an hourly change or every 30 minutes?
I would let you be the guide. I mean, if I cross my legs the uncomfortable way, I've only got about 5 minutes.
Right.
If I cross my legs the comfortable way, I got about 30. So what I do is I never go 30 on the good side, and I always try to get past, but then I also say, well, am I sitting up as straight? Do I have to cross them this way or something like that? And it's just sort of physically changing position, and all you're doing is recalibrating your body. Every time you take a knee, every time you squat, every time you touch your toes, sit one way, stand the other, you're just keeping your body calibrated. And I think we have created workstations now so we can just become trolls, and just bang it out on a keyboard. And I've got ADHD, so it's never been a problem. But I can see how when I get hyper-focused, I will go deep into very uncomfortable positions that I don't have to be in.
Right.
So.
Well, and I think as a millennial myself, I think a lot of people take breaks and immediately go to like social media. They'll take a 5-minute or something, go get a cup of coffee, come back, scroll through Instagram or Facebook, see what else everybody's doing. But if you were to take that moment instead and kind of recalibrate and kind of pay attention to your body, what you need to be paying attention to, I think would be a much more productive way to use your day.
Okay, here's the program, and we can package it and sell it. I want you to do all Twitter, tall kneeling. I want you to do all Facebook, half kneeling. I want you to do any Google searches, standing on one foot only, and you got to switch feet between searches.
Perfect.
And,
We'll make it a little workday game.
Yeah.
Send it out.
Every time you want to thumb somebody up, you got to touch your toes. Every time you want to down thumb somebody, you got to squat 5 times. So, and you'll be fine.
All right. So this is our last question for the day.
All right.
Have a stretch or movement you could suggest for tightness in the lower right pelvic/groin area.
Okay. I'm going to pick on that question a little bit because why is the problem there in the first place? How many people don't have pain in the /right groin area?
What would you, on a medical way, like what would you actually refer to that area as?
Yeah. First of all, are you doing an extreme activity? Are you skiing, doing gymnastics, or mixed martial arts where you could have gotten an injury and it won't go away? Hamstring problems and sports hernias in high sports environments linger for a long time. But let's drop it back a notch. Mere mortals. You'd be surprised how easy it is for you to have a hernia and not know it, or the beginnings of a hernia and not know it. Females that have had C-sections or multiple pregnancies, but males in that 30 to 50 range, get checked for a hernia. Yeah. Keep asking. So we look at the medically, are you in an extreme situation that could cause trauma to the pelvis or groin? Have you had a past medical history of low back, pelvis, or groin problems? And then do you have pain in a basic screen? Because if you've got pain in a screen, you just asked me for an exercise to a healthcare problem that has been undiagnosed. And so I think that before we ask for a solution of the problem, we must say, listen, this is not a normal problem. Not everybody wakes up and asks this question. Let's ask, where is this coming from? And if you've got it on one side and you've got the same mileage on your body, why isn't it on the other side? And so if you know there's a reason, let's investigate that with somebody who has a great perspective on movement. So, I'm very reluctant to give that exercise until I know and can ask a few responsible questions, because I honestly think if we're in healthcare, wellness, fitness, and performance, and we answer questions like that without saying some of the things I just said, we are part of the problem. We're a vending machine using exercise for your dumb awareness, your shitty lifestyle, your lack of consideration of multiple factors. We're giving you a solution that I'm absolutely sure isn't going to work because you're the one person that doesn't need that exercise.
Right. So to follow up, what if they've made the appointment? They're going to, check all those boxes. It's not a hernia. It's not, they know it's not a previous injury, but the appointment isn't for another 18 days. In that time span, is there anything that you might suggest to relieve the pain? 18 days is a long time to be popping ibuprofen constantly. Is there anything there that maybe in a simplistic way you could suggest?
I would. And I only say this because it is so accessible. Go through a sun salutation slow. Make sure none of those moves hurt you. Secondly, look in these transitions of position and pattern where you have pause or hold your breath or just don't feel as flexible. And don't run away from that. Face it, but don't go deep into that stretch. Just get right on the edge of it and breathe your way into it a little bit, and just don't think of the sun salutation as anything more than a moving meditation. What does this position feel like? Does it feel the same on the other side? Can I adjust it with my breathing, or did it cause pain? If it causes pain, that's one more piece of information you can take to your exam. And if you loosen it up ahead of time, you'll already have half your solution before you pay for it. So, but you've got to pick a structured path. You can't just randomly say, when I stick my elbow in my ear, it hurts, because these are just awkward ways that we exacerbate. But pick a path like a Turkish get-up or a sun salutation, and as long as those movements don't hurt, keep playing left against right, backward bend against forward bend, and say, where do I perceive tension, and what can I do to melt it away, not force it away? And believe it or not, half the journey is going to be there. I think the a well-investigated problem is already half solved. Now, it's stated in a quote much better than that, but if you will simply go to the source of why the problem's there and not just ask for the convenient solution, it'll be half solved by the time you come back out. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining me today and getting some of these questions answered. If you have more questions for Gray or Lee, please respond to a contact form we actually have on our website, movementpod.com, or you can submit them via Instagram or Facebook. That'll do it for this episode of the Movement Podcast. Thanks for listening. And if you liked what you heard, please take a minute to subscribe and review. If you want to learn more about our system and take the next step in your movement journey, visit us at movementpod.com. Until next time, be sure to first move well, then move often.